All right. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you here. Glad it wasn't raining too hard this time. We'll begin with the verse of the Kesa. Do you know how to do the bells for this? No. Okay. Do what I do. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gata of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Please stand. Three bows. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present. It fills our sacred space, guards our minds from wrong thinking. Fragrance of this incense unites us with virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom. We offer it on behalf of all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for refuge. Being one with Buddha, I resolve to each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for refuge. Being one with the Dharma, the gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for refuge. Being one with the Sangha in the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. And not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So this is the third Wednesday of the month. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's a guided meditation night. We're between the Ides of March and St. Patrick's Day. Surely there's something significant to that. And just take a few deep breaths, as always. Let your abdominals be nice and soft. Belly relaxed so your lungs can fill and empty completely, smoothly. And as the sound of the bell fades, just let your breath rest at a comfortable rhythm. No need to do anything special. Just breathe naturally, but be aware. Breathing in, breathing out. Long breath or short breath. Letting the phrase ride softly on your breath as you exhale. May I be happy. May I be free from animosity. May I be free from stress and affliction. May I look after myself with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from animosity. May all beings be free from stress and affliction. May all beings look after themselves with ease. And with your attention either at the breath, at the tip of your nose, or the front of your face, or the pit of your stomach, just follow the in and out breath. If you need to, you can note your breaths in, out, or Buddho, just to anchor your attention on the breath. And just follow each breath from the beginning to the end. Notice the beginning of the in breath, how it continues. There's a feeling of fullness. The beginning of the out breath, it continues. There's a feeling of emptiness. And you can begin to connect the breaths one to the next. Each breath is its own breath. You breathe one at a time, but connecting one to the next like a string of beads. Each bead is its own bead, and yet the end of one is the beginning of the next. Following the breath continuously. And you can notice how the breath feels in your body. Let your awareness expand out from your face or your belly to include your body with each breath. You can settle your attention in different places in the body if you'd like. Find a spot. Breathe into that spot. bringing the attention of the breath to that area. Releasing any tightness or tension. Accepting anything that's there that won't release. Let go, let be. Anything that comes into the awareness, you can accept it, let it be there without clinging to it, pushing anything away. Simply letting be, letting go. And notice how as the body becomes more calm, the breath becomes more calm, the mind becomes more calm. You can calm the breath if you'd like, just letting your breath become more and more subtle. If you'd like, as you breathe out, you can think, may my breath become calm. And as you calm your breath, you calm your mind. The two happen together naturally. Continue to breathe your attention back to the breath. Until you achieve one-pointed mind, there's nothing but breath. The bell will ring twice to end the meditation. If you'd like, when it rings the first time, bring your hands together in Gasho. Take a deep breath. Be aware of where you are, your surroundings. And when it rings the second time, you can bow and take your time coming out of meditation. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now. In reciting the sutras, hearing the Dharma, and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to all ancestors of this Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha, that their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for the health and well-being of all those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, those ministering to the sick and the grieving. We pray for those suffering from violence, from warfare, for the oppressed, the imprisoned, and for all refugees. May they be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang maihang sabe bagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings springing from the good I have done. It's interesting being in here when you can still see daylight. What are those people doing out there? No, I'm just kidding. So I actually outlined 2 Dharma talks this week because things came up and I thought, I should make notes of this. And I don't have time to give them both, so I'm going to give you a choice. Would you like to hear about meditation, or would you like to hear about women in Buddhism? Women in Buddhism. How many want women in Buddhism? That's pretty near unanimous. All right. So I'll tell you why this came up. Well, it came up for several reasons, actually. So International Women's Day was last week, but it was either right before or right after, and anyway, it wasn't quite on my radar. I should have talked about it then. But also, somebody started talking to me after services at White Sands, had some questions about things, because they had read some stuff about women in Buddhism that horrified them, and they were female. They didn't like what they had read. So, we really ought to talk about this sometimes. We actually have a couple of senseis in our local community who are female, so One of them is at home working on her dissertation right now, which is pretty much where she always is when she's not counseling someone or tutoring someone. And the other lives a little far from us. It's a little hard for her to get to, and she's dealing with some family matters and stuff. Otherwise, I would have asked one of them to give this talk. It's interesting, Sensei Michelle, she's really good at this stuff. It's really hard. She, since she's been buried in schoolwork, she almost never gets to our services. But a couple of times, some of the UU communities have tried to get me to come talk to them, and I've said, oh, well, I can't. I'm busy at White Sands or whatever, usually. And so, how about Sensei Michelle? Who's that? And then she goes out and talks to them, and then they're emailing me going, can Sensei Michelle come back and talk to us? But anyway, she's, women have not historically been treated particularly well in Buddhism. And in fact, maybe most religions have not treated women particularly well. Like all religions, Buddhism arises from a culture. Religion, it comes out of culture. Religion affects and creates culture. So it's a cultural phenomenon. All religions, all of them. And like all religions, Buddhism is kind of one component of what makes up cultures. And cultures evolve. Cultures evolve for a lot of reasons, because of technology, because of improved knowledge and understanding of science and things like that, and because they come in contact with other cultures. In fact, there was a very interesting post in one of the groups for, one of the social media groups that's made up of Soto Zen monks, and I'm in it because I'm a Soto Zen monk. And this guy is saying, do you get accused of cultural appropriation when you wear your samu regularly, which is what I wear under my robes? It's the thing that looks kind of like it's the Japanese clothing. Now, I don't wear mine except for services. So apparently this fellow, who was the chaplain, wore his to work every day or something, and people were accusing him of cultural appropriation. So the reality is there's no such thing as like a culture that is somehow intact, innate, and it's kind of like the self. There's no self. And so cultures constantly change because they come in contact with other cultures. So things evolve. Anyway, so there's a lot there that the Buddha has said. And some of those things are things that he said about women. And some of those things are things other people said the Buddha said about women, and some of which are very inaccurate. So, unfortunately, the Buddha didn't write everything down. He didn't write anything down, as a matter of fact. It was all kept track of, through oral tradition. And so basically we're stuck with what monks remembered, which mostly had to do with them. But, as I said, cultures evolve, religions evolve with them. And it would be foolish to think that because someone said something cultural, having to do with cultural conventions and understanding of society from a point of view 2,000 years ago, it would be foolish to think that we're stuck with that now. The Buddha did say some things that were essential, that were absolute, that you can't be Buddhist without, or at least it would be very difficult. There's 4 noble truths. If you said, I really only like 3 of them, it would be very difficult to call yourself a Buddhist. 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the teaching on not self, understanding of impermanence, the law of karma. Hatred is never appeased by hatred, only by non-hatred is hatred appeased. Those things the Buddha said, and they define Buddhism and what Buddhism is. Now, those particular things come from the Pali Canon, from which probably is as close as we can get to the early teachings, the classical teachings of Buddhism. There are things that came along later that the Buddha didn't say, but that were in line with the Buddha's teachings, and that I think maybe clarify or make more accessible the Dharma. So, things like the Bodhisattva vows. The Buddha didn't come up with those. They're sort of attributed to him, but they really came along hundreds of years later. The Buddha way, as the idea of Buddha nature and stuff, that came along a little bit later, but it's still very much in line with those core teachings of Buddhism and sort of understanding what it means to practice the Dharma. And these things, by the way, are not, this is not a belief system. This is a system of practice. And so these things are tools to help you develop wisdom. If it's not a tool to help you develop wisdom, then we don't necessarily need to rely on it too much. And so these things that come out of cultural contexts can stay in a cultural context, which means that as culture changes and evolves, they can change and evolve too. We're not stuck with them. So there's ideas like that a woman can't be enlightened unless she's reborn a male first. This comes up. It's in the Lotus Sutra. It's in, I was actually reading the Essential Shinran, to go along with our reading of the Tanisho. And it's in there, Shinran believed that when women had said the Nimbutsu sincerely, that they would still be reborn in the Pure Land, but what would happen would be that they would be reborn male upon the point of death so that they could enter the Pure Land. The Buddha absolutely did not say any of that. In fact, the Buddha's stepmother came to him after his enlightenment, and she followed him. He had gone home to visit several years after his awakening, and she followed him to where he was going to stay next, and she arrived with her, feet cracked and bleeding from walking barefooted so many miles, following him and everything, and she went up to him and asked him to ordain her, and he said no. And so she asked him again the next time she saw him, and he said no. And she asked him again the next time she saw him, and he said no. And so Ananda sees her outside the gates of the monastery, and he says, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I keep asking the Buddha to ordain me, and he keeps saying no." And he says, "How many times have you asked him?" "I've asked him 3 times. So he goes in to see the Buddha, and he says, "Buddha, how come you're not ordaining your stepmother?" Who, by the way, was followed there with a bunch of other women. So there's a large group of women there who all wanted to ordain. And the Buddha said, it would complicate things. And he said, "Well, do you not think that women can become enlightened?" And he said, "Well, of course women can become enlightened." And he said, "Do you not think that it's easier for a woman to become enlightened if she can leave the householder life and enter a monastery and live free from all of those householder obligations?" And the Buddha said, "Well, of course you could." He said, "So this woman who raised you from infancy to adulthood, you don't think you owe it to her to do that for her?" And the Buddha said, "Yeah, I guess I do." And so he ordained her and all of her friends. So there, all of a sudden, there's like about 1,000 bhikkhunis, basically nuns, who were ordained. You wonder, so why did he not do that to begin with? And he didn't say really, but I suspect, it was kind of controversial at the time to ordain women into, there were other orders, holy groups. It's probably kind of controversial, and he probably figured it would complicate running the monastery, but not enough that it prevented him doing it. There are a lot of, and she became enlightened. In fact, a lot of these women became arahants, and they were women when they became arahants, and they were still women after they became arahants. So there's no reason, that a woman can't be enlightened. The Buddha put Sariputta, who was the best teacher he had, in charge of instructing women, because Once he decided to ordain them, he felt they really needed to get the best instruction out there and from the most virtuous person possible. He wanted to make sure that they got the best. Unfortunately, India is a patriarchal culture. A lot of the Asian cultures are patriarchal. This one is patriarchal, but doesn't mean it has to stay that way. It doesn't mean it has to dictate everything. Some of the issues with women that people will kind of call back on and say, well, the Buddha said this, or the Vinaya says that, and all this kind of stuff, the way women should be treated. A lot of this comes out of the Vinaya, which are the rules for running a monastery and for monastic behavior and all that kind of stuff. And so people will say, oh, well, it says it in the Vinaya, so therefore that's the way it is. Well, the Vinaya also says that I can't pee standing up. I'm a monk. It says monks can't do that. It also says that the only medication that we're allowed to take if we're monks is that which is made from fermented urine. Well, guess what? I have never, ever taken medication that was made from fermented urine, and I bet I never will. And I've taken plenty of medication in my life. So, again, these are things that happened at a certain time and place, and that were rules that probably made a lot of sense within that context. But we live in a different context, and so we don't need to be hung up on those things. So there actually has been a long history of equality and in terms of women in Buddhism in certain contexts. So Dogen, who founded Soto Zen in Japan, this was a long time ago. It's like 800 years ago. Wrote a fascicle in the Shobo Ginzo, which is a collection of his most important writings, called "Getting the Marrow by Doing Obeisance." In other words, getting to the most core principles of the practice by bowing, doing obeisance, bowing, and he goes on this rant about monks who wouldn't bow to female monks. And he said, what's the big deal about being male? Space is space. Form is form. Well, I mean, we all come out of the same dirt and water and air and combustion, regardless of those things. What's the big deal? And he says, once you find the teacher, in other words, once you find the path, the teacher, you should seek teachings everywhere. Seek teachings from a cloud, from a pillar. And he talks about this one monk who took instruction from a fox for years until he became enlightened and stuff. So why not a woman? Even a 7-year-old girl, if she's enlightened, you should bow to her and you should take teachings from her. So, and again, this is 800 years ago in Japan that this was written. So there are really both of those social currents available to us. And I don't think it matters who you are. If you do good, avoid doing evil, purify your mind, you can awaken. And there's no reason you should be treated any differently than anyone else. So that's my rant for tonight on that. Questions, comments? We got time. Get the mic. Anything come on online? Okay.
You were talking about women in Buddhism, kind of the history of it to begin with. What's the state of things today?
So the state of things today really sort of thing. So in the U.S., those orders, especially those that have been established for some time and that have a lot of Americans involved and stuff, tend to be pretty inclusive. So like Soto Zen, of course, again, Soto Zen has a long tradition of being accepting of women. But there are a lot of pretty prominent teachers in that tradition. Also in Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of you I know have read Pema Chodron, right? And there's a couple of others that I could name. And in Rinzai Zen also, in the U.S. at least, there are a lot of fairly prominent female Dharma teachers. So Theravada Buddhism is kind of interesting. Southeast Asian Buddhism. So the order of bhikkhunis, the female order, died out hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. I'm not sure. I haven't studied this in a while, but and so there was for a long time no order of Theravada female monastics. There have been some attempts to reestablish that, and some of these attempts have been successful. So in the Sri Lankan order, I think they have ordained women now. They have a nuns order. Thailand, which, a lot of the Vipassana movement and all of that stuff, the mindfulness movement, a lot of that's rooted in Thai Buddhism because the Thai forest tradition a lot of people sought that out for meditation instruction and that sort of thing. There have been some attempts to reestablish female monasticism in Thai Buddhism, and those attempts have generally failed. There's a guy who's pretty well known, who's Ajahn Brahm. He's a British guy who ordained in Thailand and trained in Thailand and ended up being the abbot of a Thai monastery in Australia. So that's complicated enough, right? But he had some women who came to him and wanted to ordain, and he said, okay, I'll ordain you. And he went to the Chinese monastery down the road and got some of the nuns from the Chinese monastery to come up, because you have to have a certain number of nuns to ordain a nun. And so he had to borrow some Mahayana nuns to come and do this, and he ordained these women. And his monastery was basically expelled from the order because of that. Some of that has to do with the relationship of the Thai government to Thai Buddhism. The king has funded Buddhism in Thailand for a long time. And so I guess the king's men showed up and said, you can't do that. And he said, well, I did it. And they said, well, you've got to undo it. And he said, no. And so they kicked him out, kicked the order. So he's independent now. And I'm not sure what the status is on that. I haven't looked into that in a while. I mean, I know they're still nuns, but I don't know if he's expanded the order of nuns in there or not. One of the biggest sort of Chinese-based, or it's Taiwan-based, I guess, actually, Mahayana orders in the world is the one that Guangming down in Orlando that has a temple, and the head of the temple is female down there, and apparently that's pretty common in that particular order. They have a lot of high-ranking female teachers. So, it's increasingly balanced, but it kind of depends on where you're looking.
I was going to comment, when we were going through our Bright Dawn program, like Neil and myself, our cohort was about equal.
Yeah.
Male to female. And I can't really speak for exact numbers from the other cohorts going on, but it seemed to be the same kind of split. So it just worked out that way, where it was just kind of 50-50, 60-40, something like that.
So for a long time, it was very male-dominated. We had one female in mine.
In the early ones, yeah.
Yeah, and there was one in LM, so I was LM3, there was one in 2. I'm not sure who was in 1, but it gradually has gone more and more that way.
And we had a number of female teachers.
Yeah.
It might have been, again, half and half, or even the majority for us.
Maybe. I think Yeah, I think the future of spirituality in the West is really going to belong to the women. You know, I just, but, you know, traditions are slow to change. People make assumptions, that kind of thing. I mean, but look here, it's 50-50 roughly in the room, almost. And sometimes it's more women than men. And you look at White Sands on a given day, I think there's almost always more women in there than men. Any other questions? I thought I'd get more argument or something. Anyway, you know, all of the traditions that I'm involved with directly are very inclusive. So Bright Dawn, we make no distinction. There's nothing, no distinction. Soto Zen, they don't even call women, they're female monastics, nuns. They just call them monks. Everybody's a monk. All right. Well, if that's it, then we'll go ahead and say the closing vows. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Friends, I respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us must strive to awaken. Awaken. Take heed. Do not squander this life. Please stand. 3 bows to the Buddha. Teacher, to the Sangha, each other. Thank you very much for being here.